In this tutorial, let's see how we can use the resolution emission option of the fluid settings to pour a viscous fluid such as honey over a piece of chocolate. The resolution option generates laminar flow, which is very much beneficial to simulate viscous fluids. Let's go over the scene setup. Here we have a plain mesh and a chocolate mesh, and we have two emitters, one over here and the other one here. And these emitters are animated to follow this Bezier curve. And here, a follow path constraint has been used for these emitters to follow this Bezier curve, and the offset has been keyframed between frame 10 and frame 110. So let's take a look at the animation. So that's the animation of the emitters. And if you look at the face orientation of these emitters, they're actually facing down. There you go, that's the first emitter, and this the second emitter. Now let's go ahead and start working on the fluid simulation. Let's select both of these emitters, and let's add a new group, and let's add inflow, and let's add emitters. So here we have two emitters. Now under emission tab, let's use resolution option as we are interested in a laminar flow for viscous fluids. And if you look at the resolution, at a resolution of 100, the total particles are about 19,800. And as we increase the resolution, we can see that the total number of particles are increased. And this depends on how many frames we have the emission for. So in this case, let's start the emission at frame 11, which is one frame after the animation starts. And let's end the emission at frame 110. Now let's increase the resolution to 350. And let's decrease the size of the particles to 0.01. And let's give the particles a normal velocity of 4 meters per second. So these are the emission settings. Now let's head to the physics tab. And here, let's decrease the time step to 0.02 to slow down the simulation because it's a viscous fluid. And let's increase the subframes to 25. For viscous fluids, higher subframes enable more stable simulations. And let's increase the viscosity to 15. And let's reduce the stiffness to 0.05 so that the fluid particles are going to be less chaotic. And let's click on Size Deflect as we would like to use the particle size in the deflection. And let's take a look. It's good, but we need to add colliders to the plane mesh and the chocolate mesh. So let's select the plane mesh. Let's head to colliders. Let's add a selection collider. And let's give it a friction of something like 0.5. And let's select the chocolate mesh. And let's add a selection collider. And here, let's give it a stickiness of, let's say 0.05. We need a little bit of stickiness on the chocolate mesh because we would like the particles to stick to the surface a little bit to give the appearance of a viscous fluid pouring down the chocolate. So let's say 0.05. And let's give it a friction of 0.8. And let's take a look. This looks good, but we would like to give the fluid a little more shape. So let's head to fluid settings and let's go to springs. And here, let's give it a spring force of something like 3. So this would help retain the shape of the viscous fluid as it pours over the chocolate. So let's run the simulation again. So here, as we can see, the shape is retained a bit more. Right, let's change the end frame to 130. Looks good. But let's also introduce fluid interaction so that the particles from these two emitters interact with each other during the simulation. So let's head to fluid interactions and let's add an interaction and click OK. While we are adding interaction between the particles of emitter 1 and emitter 2. Now let's bake the simulation again. There we go. That's the fluid simulation. Now let's press current cache to bake. Now, in order to better visualize the fluid interaction, we can actually change the viewport color of the fluid particles of each emitter. So let's head to fluid settings and let's head to emission. And here under viewport display, let's get to material. Now here, emitter 1, let's give it blue. And emitter 2, let's give it something like orange. And let's take a look. And there we go. So we can see that the blue particles are pushing the orange particles. So that's the fluid interaction we were looking for. Looks good. Now let's head to the mesh module and let's add mesh. And let's add geometry meshes to the emitter group. Let's head to the last frame. And here, let's head to the wireframe mode. We need to increase the density of this mesh. So the way we can do that is by decreasing the voxel resolution. Say 0.01. Here we go. Now we have much more density. Reducing the voxel resolution also helps to reduce any flicker in the brightness of the mesh during rendering. And let's smooth. Since this is a viscous fluid, let's give it a smoothness of something like 35. So the mesh would be really smooth. And let's reduce the min max to 0.03 so that the mesh is closer to the particles. There we go. Looks good. Let's get to the solid view. Now, in order to view the simulation in real time with the mesh, let's do a flipbook render. Let's first hide the particles in the viewport, and let's head to rendering module, and let's do a flipbook render. Let's view render. That's the fluid simulation we were looking for. Now let's head to the shading tab, and to the mesh, let's first assign a chocolate material. And let's set material. Now let's head to cycles preview. And let's transfer this chocolate material to the chocolate mesh. So let's select the chocolate mesh. And under materials, let's give it chocolate. Now let's select the fluid mesh. And under assigning tab, let's change this to honey and set material. And there we go. That's the fluid simulation we were looking for. We hope you like this tutorial. Thank you and stay tuned for more tutorials.